Well, good evening, everybody. How you doing? Well, folks, here we go with the season finale of Y'all Ain't Gonna Believe What Happened to Russell. Y'all ain't gonna believe it, as we left off last, Uncle Junior had died, and Russell and Aunt Thea, they went out on the porch and saw the little hummingbird, and they thought of Uncle Junior, and, they kind of becoming friends. So, the situation then ended, so sad for Uncle Junior. I don't even have no snacks. It's not even snack worthy. So here we go, y'all. This is the last season finale of Y'all Ain't Gonna Believe What Happened to Russell. Now, I got gum. That's so much snack on my hair tonight. I got gum. So y'all sit back and relax, because here we go by demand, the season finale. Here we go. Now, with Aunt Thea saying that, it seemed to make old Russell happy. For days since Uncle Junior had died, no one had even paid any attention to him at all. Poor little thing. All he would do is eat his little food, drink his water, go out through his little doggy door to do his business, and then he'd come on back in the house and sit by the chair in the den where he and Uncle Junior used to do what? Watch Walker, Texas Ranger. Because you remember Uncle Junior thought he was a cowboy from Detroit. I don't know where he got that from. Okay, one day, as family and friends were over, Michael was in the kitchen fixing a plate. And old Russell slowly walked in, and he looked so pitiful. Michael said he put a couple of ribs in old Russell's little dog bowl and gave him a few of his doggy treats that Uncle Junior used to give him. Michael said that he felt really bad for Russell that day. Say, little thing was just walking around just pitiful, y'all. Just say it. Now, Aunt Thea and Russell went in the kitchen. And as Aunt Thea began getting breakfast prepared, she decided to heat up old Russell's food like Uncle Junior used to do. She didn't do that thing before. She even began to talk to him as well. This is what she said. Well, Russell, look like it's time for us to sit down and have a cup of coffee and decide what you're going to wear to Daddy's funeral. It seemed as if Russell understood what Uncle Thea was telling him. He walked up to Aunt Thea, and he gently rubbed her leg with his little side of his little face. Something he had never done before. Aunt Thea reached down and scratched him on the head like old Uncle Junior used to do. It was something she had never imagined herself doing when Uncle Junior was alive. Aunt Thea picked Russell out a sharp outfit to wear to Uncle Junior's funeral. Uncle Junior did allow his main man to go out looking just any kind of way. I mean, your boy showed up at Uncle Junior's funeral. What was he all? Cleaner than the Board of Health and casket clean. Your boy was ready. Could lay down with him if he wanted to. Aunt Thea and Russell both had on black suits with hats to match. There was a huge turnout, which to the 10th power really pleased Aunt Thea, because some folks like a big old turnout at their funeral. I don't know why they do that, but that's what, like to see how many folks come. And for some reason, some folk just look like they just like big old turnouts at funerals. They just give them something to brag about later. And let's not forget all the cards with the checks and cash inside to come along with these little funerals. I found out about that myself. To tell the truth and shame the devil, Big Mama would always say, Michael was not the one to sit next to at a funeral. And he made sure he sat next to his favorite cousins so as to ensure he got his laugh on. She always felt that Michael was always joked at funerals just to keep from crying, because you remember what he did at his granddaddy's funeral. It all started when they were young and attended a funeral of a relative down south where the cemetery was only a few feet away from the church. And the older cousin had told Michael some of the ghosts and the folk that were buried in the cemetery were sitting right behind him during the service. Can you believe they did that to that baby? That scared Michael so bad. He paid his cousins $5 each to sleep with him in the room for the next several months, because he said that he didn't know that ghosts from the cemetery were that close to him and he didn't see them. He couldn't get over it. He kept telling his cousins that during the funeral, Aunt Verdine and Uncle Frank were sitting directly behind him. But they was dead now. That's what he thought, because they were scared the baby to death. So there was no way the ghosts were sitting behind him, because he saw his other aunts and uncles sitting behind him. So he knew that the other folks was not sitting behind him. So he thought. His cousins didn't help the situation at all because they fed right into their older cousin was telling Michael and never cracked a smile. She told Michael years later how they were all joking with him, but she didn't think that it ever brought, it didn't matter to him one bit. He still believed that those ghosts were sitting behind him at that funeral, as Uncle Junior's called it, funeral. So during the going home service for Uncle Junior, Russell sat in the front pew, right between Aunt Thea and one of Uncle Junior's grandchildren, who had recently, taken a little liking to old spoiled Russell. At the funeral, Aunt Thea held her composure for a long time, as did your boy Russell, for the most part anyway. But as soon as the funeral director went to close Uncle Junior's casket, and just as Sister Delphine started singing Precious Lord, Take My Hand, which, let me let you know, was Uncle Junior's favorite hymn. That's when her and Uncle Russell, they just cut the food. You know how folks get at a funeral. Y'all ain't seen nothing what these two did. Terrible. It's terrible. Aunt Thea was hollering, and so was Russell. Can you imagine her barking and hollering, and he barking and hollering? Whew. That was all Michael had been waiting on. Somebody to start cutting the food. Aunt Thea and Uncle Junior's oldest boy, Charles, had to get up and grab his mama and old silly Michael, who had purposely not been asked to be a pallbearer. They purposely asked him not to be a pallbearer because they knew he was going to crack jokes on somebody. But Michael, they just happily scooped up old Russell, who at first was very reluctant to let anybody touch him. He ain't want nobody to touch him. Just barking, just growling. He ain't want nobody to touch him because he was upset. So ultimately, Michael was the only one that was able to calm him down. Uncle Junior was finally rolled out of the church and placed in the back of the hearse. The funeral procession was long. It was long, which made the ride to the cemetery seem to take forever. Now, once at the burial site, the family gathered in front of where Uncle Junior was to be laid. Michael put Russell down, and as soon as he did, he took off running, and Michael took off after him. But he never caught up to old Russell. Charles told Michael, don't worry, and that he was sure that Russell would return as soon as, he would hear the car starting to, leave. He'd be back. The ceremony at the grave site was nice. Aunt Thea cut the food once again, tried to jump in. You know how they do at the funerals, Whew. And you know what she did? When she tried to jump in, it was revealed, that wig slid back, and, whoo. She showed what was going on in front of God and country. She shouldn't have did that, but it happened. Her Sunday going to meeting wig just slid all over the place, bless her heart. That was all Michael needed to see. And as he reenacted it several times that evening after the folk had left Aunt Thea and Uncle Junior's house, he had to show everybody, grab one of her wigs, and he reenacted the whole thing. It was terrible. Sure enough, as the engines began to start and the cars began to start, leaving the old gravesite. Michael looked up, and here he come. Old Russell, slowly but surely, was making his way back to where they had laid his best friend. Russell stood by Michael as they lowered Uncle Junior to the ground and watched until they threw the last heap of dirt on top of his casket. Michael then picked up Russell and took him back to the family car. And he laid quietly in Michael's lap all the way back to the house. Poor baby. He just was so hurt. Now old Russell stuck to Aunt Thea like glue. They were inseparable, child. Can y'all believe this? They became like this. They depended on one another's strength. As the months went by, and they developed a bond that seemed to have been stronger than the one old Russell had with Uncle Junior. Russell even got hooked on the soap operas with Aunt Thea, child. Try making some noise if you want to. When him and Aunt Thea were watching their stories, old Russell would almost tear you a new one. He didn't allow anyone to interrupt him and Aunt Thea's time together. Ain't that something? How things turned out with that? As the years went on, Aunt Thea had begun to notice that Russell wasn't finishing his food and was losing his little eyesight. His kidneys were shutting down, and he was always sleeping. So after taking him to the, taking him to the vet, she made that old decision to go ahead and have Russell put down, y'all. The day they buried old Russell was a beautiful spring day. Aunt Thea thought it would only be funny to bury old Russell right in between where Uncle Junior planted his collards and she planted her flower bed, especially seeing that during the time that he returned from his abduction and hated everybody is where he always decided to pee anyway. So she said, let me just bury that old fool there. Now, just as Aunt Thea and Uncle Junior's grandchild, the one who used to, fight with Russell all the time when she was a toddler, she didn't grow up a little bit, and they put the last bit of dirt on top of his grave. Guess what happened, y'all? 2 little hummingbirds came out of the east and flew in a circle as they were doing their little dance. Aunt Thea looked up and laughed and said, all right now, I see y'all. Get on out of here. I'll be seeing you too soon. That's the end, y'all. Y'all ain't gonna believe what happened to Russell. I hope y'all enjoyed this, because I surely have enjoyed spending time with you guys and letting you hear about old Uncle Junior, Aunt Thea, and his main man Russell. So stay tuned for our next story. We don't know which one it's gonna be, but it's gonna be a good one, y'all. Good night. Ta-ta.